We're at the WBA Alliance World Congress with Shirkant Shenwai, the CEO. And Shirkant, you've got quite a versatile and quite a big program here. We're looking at things like 5G, public hotspots. Why don't you give us a brief overview of what we're talking about here at this Congress?
Sure, thank you. First of all, thank you for having us here. So we are Wireless Broadband Alliance, and as the name suggests, this is essentially looking at wireless broadband services. That's what we have been focused on. However, one core part of our focus has been the Wi-Fi component in terms of wireless broadband. And again, from a service provider perspective, not so much from a technology perspective, how do you make Wi-Fi work on an end-to-end basis? So we were running this program for the last several years called Next Generation Hotspot Program, which looks at how do you transform the Wi-Fi as it has been in the past to the next generation Wi-Fi. And what does next generation Wi-Fi mean? It essentially means you are making Wi-Fi work, feel, and behave like a cellular experience. You switch on the device, it looks for the network, it connects to the network seamlessly, securely, and then you can have an interoperability of services between different service providers. Whether you're connected to your home network or you're connected to a partner network, how do you connect seamlessly? So those are some of the foundation things that we have been working on. And in fact, I'm pleased to say that we have come quite a long way now, because all these NGH technologies and capabilities, which essentially use something called Passpoint certification from Wi-Fi Alliance, has now been widely supported. A lot of networks are supporting these capabilities. And we thought now that we have these technologies that are available and that make Wi-Fi seamless, secure, interoperable, let's look at what is the role that Wi-Fi plays beyond public hotspots in terms of how these technologies are then used in smart cities, in how these connected city vision has to be supported. How do you use these next-generation technologies and making Wi-Fi seamless, secure, interoperable, support opportunities around Internet of Things. The IoT, as you know, that's quite a significant opportunity that everyone is looking at. Big data analytics. So all these areas is what essentially you see here in terms of the various aspects which are about the role of Wi-Fi as well as other unlicensed technologies working in tandem with the licensed technologies, and how to then shape up opportunities in each of these areas.
I want to go into a few of those details in a moment, but first, let's talk about the membership, because you do bring a whole variety of different players into this.
Right, and that has always been the case. WBA always has had a very unique membership, and that has been primarily driven by the fact that Wi-Fi has been of relevancy to not just one particular type of carrier or ecosystem player. The mobile operators, obviously, a few years ago were very interested in this because they realized that in terms of data being consumed on the devices, especially smartphones, there's an opportunity to use Wi-Fi in addition to their cellular network, 3G or 4G, to support data traffic requirements. The cable companies or the fixed broadband operators always found it interesting because that gives them the ability to then take care of the content being delivered on a mobile device basis rather than the typical TV, which is where they used to deliver the content in the past. So we have always had a unique mix of mobile operators, fixed broadband companies like Comcast of this world, international mix of all these different companies, so China Mobile to British Telecom to Orange to AT&T to Comcast, Liberty Global, but also pure Wi-Fi companies like Boingo, for instance, and aggregators like HiPass. On the other side, the ecosystem vendors that work with this particular group of service providers, whether you're talking about Cisco, Ruckus, Ericsson, others. And very interestingly, in the last several years, we also seen companies like Google and Microsoft, who are also members of WBA, coming and playing a role in shaping how Wi-Fi gets used from their perspective in a much more seamless, secure, interoperable way.
One of the takeaways for me already is the idea that really anyone could be a member, in the sense that anyone who has infrastructure, it could be a large arena, it could be a city, they have a big stake in this.
Yes, and it's interesting you mentioned cities, because what we have started seeing besides this group of the operators, service providers, and the technology vendors, the cities, as you know, have been taking quite a significant interest in making public Wi-Fi deployed across the cities. And it's quite a, obviously, momentum behind that. And not so much because it's just another way of giving free Wi-Fi to public, which clearly is probably one of the motivations. But the cities this time around are looking at how public Wi-Fi plays a role in the vision that they have for smart cities, and how it supports the underlying fabric or the infrastructure that they require, the connectivity layer that they require to support their vision for smart cities, which obviously would require more than Wi-Fi, but Wi-Fi being one of the component technologies. And we started seeing cities getting very engaged with WBA to look at, again, the technology evolution roadmap, some of the best practices around deployment of these technologies and connectivity, but also then look at how the public-private partnership model need to support this. And again, like I said, WBA has always had a lot of service providers who've been looking at deploying these technologies. Now that cities are looking into this, they want to work with the private partners. And that's, again, what we're seeing in WBA as another very interesting stakeholder group. And in fact, we just launched something called Connected City Advisory Board. And we had an inaugural meeting yesterday with about a dozen cities, Singapore, Barcelona, San Francisco, New York, and others who were part of that meeting.
I hope San Jose was part of it, because it seems like a big part of that value, it's a two-way street as far as understanding what can be done, what the possibilities are, and the cities really need to know that.
Absolutely, and it's a dialogue. And I think that's what, again, as an industry body, we find that the industry works best when the diverse stakeholders understand what the common pain points are. What is really, what needs to be done in enabling things that make ultimately the end users comfortable, deliver a better experience to them, addresses the connectivity issue, again, from an end user perspective, not so much from a technology perspective. And again, like I said, that is best achieved when you have different stakeholders coming together and understanding where the gaps are. Not just from their perspective, but from a more of an end user perspective and from an industry perspective. So yes, those are the kind of things we are hoping to see coming out of the work that the Connected City Advisory Board will do on top of the normal work that happens in the WBA, to look at some common challenges, address those challenges. Also at the same time, propagate common learnings. There's tons of things some of the progressive cities have done. Those need to be shared with other cities so that they can take steps with more confidence, knowing that this has worked for San Francisco, this is how New York is approaching this, or maybe this is how Singapore has done it. So perhaps I can learn from that and do my plan for this public Wi-Fi for cities, all the way to smart city. How can I do it without necessarily making mistakes?
And as you point out, it's the simple things, but if they can take pain points away from their citizens, so whether it be easier parking or reduced time in traffic, everyone wins.
Yeah, absolutely. And ultimately, the technology has to serve that purpose. It has to serve that purpose. So it's not about just, again, being a city that says I have a gigabit of Wi-Fi. What good does it to the citizen? Does it make people live their life differently? Does it enable them to consume the city's services differently? Whether it is, instead of sitting in front of the city hall trying to pay for something, can they do it differently instead of looking for parking lots and where to park my car and go around the city 5 times before you can figure out where in downtown, how do you access a particular location, and then not worry about the parking. So those are the areas where, given that you have this more pervasive deployment of public Wi-Fi and other licensed technologies as well, how do you make the best use of that to solve some of these issues? And beyond that, clearly, it's the digital divide is a big topic we talk about. The underserved communities need to be provided affordable connectivity. We all know how transformative that can be. And again, those are the kind of things we think if the city leaders and the private partners think about these things together, we would probably solve a lot of those issues which have quite a societal impact and not just a technological impact.
Great. Well, I appreciate your time today, and good luck.
Thank you so much.